planetary invasion method has remained a constant since the dawn of galactic warfare, achieving total space and orbital supremacy over the planet through the decimation of the Defender's fleet, followed by orbital bombardment to destroy remaining spaceports, thus denying the Defender of spaceflight capability, then conducting mass orbital landing of ground troops to finally seize and occupy the planet. Such is the nature of an invasion, that all sentient species devoted their planetary defense on having the largest fleet possible to deter and repel any aggression, while also stationing forward deployed units amongst border regions in order to detect, intercept, and hold the fort before the main fleet could arrive. It is well established that by the time orbital landing was made possible, the war is already practically over, and any attempt to continue fighting on a planet's surface would only be met with increased orbital bombardments and eventual destruction of the Defender's civilization or species. Any sentient species would either fight to the bitter end or surrender, with the chance of preserving their now enslaved species. When the Tuvalians discovered Earth, humans have only managed to develop crude spaceflight capability and had zero combat spaceship. The planet was unusually rich in dihydrogen monoxide, one of the most valuable resources in the entire universe, and the fact that it was virtually defenseless made Earth a very lucrative target for an invasion. With the prospect of an unopposed landing, the Tuvalians don't even bother to amass a proper invasion fleet, filled with battleships and cruisers alike. The fleet they sent for the invasion of Earth instead comprised only of 43 orbital assault ships carrying 8 million marines, associated logistic auxiliaries, and token escort of a squadron of small destroyers to protect the invasion fleet from pirates. Orbital bombardment was viewed unnecessary, as human spaceports are deemed to be not more advanced than the average Tuvalian high school science clubs. Humans first detected the Tuvalian invasion fleet by accident, just as they jumped near Pluto, and continuous observations are made to identify the sudden appearance of hundreds of foreign objects in the solar system. It was not until the Tuvalian fleet had passed the orbit of Saturn that high-resolution images were possible to be taken, clearly showing a fleet of alien spaceships. Measures to establish contact are taken by the United Nations on behalf of humanity, but any attempt at communication was swiftly ignored by the Tuvalians, who viewed humanity as a primitive species of little significance. Instead, Tuvalian destroyers demonstrated a show of force by vaporizing several asteroids at the Kuiper Belt, making their hostile intent very clear. With no time to develop fleets of spaceships, countries worldwide consolidated under the United Nations banner to collectively defend Earth with all currently available resources from all armed forces across the globe. Ground-launched and ship-based anti-satellite and ballistic missile defense systems were dispersed to defend major population centers. Long-range air defenses provided a second layer of defense against any object that has entered the atmosphere, with medium-range, short-range, point defense systems, and fighter interceptors armed with air-launched anti-satellite missiles, forming layers upon layers of a planet-wide integrated air defense network. Humanity has prepared their last stand. The Tuvalians concentrated their orbital landing effort on the largest and most populous human settlement, Tokyo, believed to be the center of human civilization and government. Their fleet parked on low Earth orbit at 600 kilometers above Earth's surface, and the first wave of hundreds of landing crafts poured out of the orbital assault ships, dropping down towards Japan. Humanity responded by firing their first shot on what would later be known as the Pacific Turkey Shoot. Japanese destroyer Haguro launched her salvo of SM-3 anti-ballistic missiles at the incoming landing crafts, followed suit by Maya, Atago, Ashigara, Kongo, Miyoko, Chokai, Kirishima, and South Korean cruiser ROKS Jongjo the Great. At the same time, the American fleet in Yokosuka, comprising a single Ticonderoga-class cruiser and 10 Burke-class destroyers, along with Chinese North Sea Fleet's 4 Renhai-class cruisers, stand by to launch follow-on salvo. Hundreds of SM-3 missiles streaked through the sky towards outer space, racing to intercept the marauding invaders. The missile's kinetic kill vehicles impacted Tavalian landing crafts at a closing speed of Mach 24, punching clean through their heat shields and causing the craft to burn and disintegrate as they enter the atmosphere. Hundreds of landing crafts were destroyed in the matter of seconds, coming down to Earth as nothing more than burning scraps of wreck and corpses. The few surviving ones fared no better, as they were also quickly shot down by ground-based THAAD and Patriot missile batteries stationed all across Japan. Never before the galaxy witnessed such suborbital and endo-atmospheric defences in action. The Tavalians' landing crafts are designed without significant manoeuvring capability, being only able to perform small course correction adjustments, and thus helplessly succumbs to the barrage of anti-ballistic missiles being thrown at them. The Tavalians had a third of their entire landing force wiped out in a short amount of time. 3 million Marines perished without firing a single shot in return. Admirals of the Tavalian invasion force look in horror and shock from the bridge of their command ship, then hastily discuss their next step, while preparing themselves to report the embarrassing loss to their superiors. The decision was made to halt further orbital landings while waiting for reinforcements, in the form of 6 battleships to provide orbital gunfire support, and stay in low Earth orbit to locate and map all human defences, which proved to be a very difficult task, given the Tavalians didn't even bother to spend time and resources to research into humanity beforehand. Low Earth orbit was deemed as a safe distance. The humans surely do not possess missiles with large enough warheads to reach that far up in space and destroy the large spaceships, right? Prior, just after the Tavalian fleet had crossed the Kuiper Belt, all automated nuclear retaliatory strike systems, such as the Russian Dead Hand, were mutually disabled temporarily. Although without small objections from some countries, all 9 nuclear weapon states agreed to utilize their nuclear-tipped intercontinental ballistic missile, ICBM arsenal, as crude orbital defense missiles to destroy the large Tavalian spaceships in orbit if deemed necessary. And now, ground-based missile silos on silo fields across the Chinese desert, North Korean interiors, American Midwest, and Russian Far East all open their silo doors to fire in anger for the first time in history, and launches a coordinated attack towards the Tavalian fleet. At the same time, hundreds of Japanese, South Korean, and American F-15 fighter interceptors were scrambled from their bases across Japan and in Daegu, followed suit by 2 aviation regiments of Russian MiG-31 interceptors. These aircraft were all armed with hastily produced AIM-161 and Burevestnik air-launched anti-satellite missiles. Zoom climbing to 40,000 feet at supersonic speed, the fighter interceptors fire their missiles in an attempt to saturate any possible missile defense system Tavalian spaceships may possess. This assumption turned out to be correct, as Tavalian ships engaged their point defense systems to shoot down the incoming barrage of hundreds of anti-satellite missiles, which provided a crucial distraction for the ICBMs to approach undetected. The first ICBMs, a salvo of 4 North Korean Hwasong-17, the closest to targeted launch, was the first to reach their targets. Each missiles detonated their 350 kiloton warhead in close proximity to a spaceship, which proved sufficient to destroy even the large Tavalian orbital assault ships to pieces. The rest of the ICBMs followed suit, aimed at any large targets, be it orbital assault ships, orbital command ship, or large auxiliaries, such as fleet oilers and repair ships. With the defences preoccupied in engaging smaller air-launched anti-satellite missiles, the majority of ICBMs slipped through and hit their intended targets. The nuclear barrage served as the final straw for Tavalian admirals, who hastily ordered a disorganized retreat to any ship still operational. The command ship barely managed to limp into hyperdrive to escape towards Jupiter, followed only by 2 damaged orbital assault ships, a few small auxiliaries, and the escorting destroyers, before making the final jump out of the solar system and into their home world. The 6 battleships previously ordered to reinforce the invasion fleet were also recalled back to their ports. Following the departure of the surviving Tavalian fleet, humanity began to prepare for what they believed to be a full-on assault of a larger scale, and heavily invested in building proper space defenses to deal with any possible future invasion. 10 cycles later, the fear materialized. The Tavalians are back, not merely for resources or revenge, but also for honor. The intergalactic community has shunned them for losing a battle against primitives, and they're willing to do anything in their power to restore their reputation. This time, a proper battle fleet comprising 18 battleships, 30 cruisers, 4 squadrons of destroyers, along with hundreds of orbital assault ships carrying 50 million marines and associated logistic auxiliaries were dispatched. 2/3 of Tavalian military power poured into one giant grand fleet, even though continuous observation of Earth repeatedly shows that humanity doesn't even bother to build a single spaceship, even after all this time. The Tavalian Grand Fleet jumped into the solar system near Pluto yet again, the difference being that they now attempted to establish communication with Earth to negotiate the term of humanity's surrender or face total annihilation. But this time, it was the humans that swiftly ignored Tavalian broadcasts. After crossing the lunar orbit, the Tavalian Grand Fleet began to move into position for their assault. Battleships would close into high Earth geosynchronous orbit, around 35,000 kilometers high above the surface of the Earth, before bombarding known locations or planetary defenses, clearing the way for mass orbital landing, now with maneuverable landing crafts. Giant battleships, each a kilometer long, armed with large orbital cannons, up-armored to withstand a megaton nuclear blast, move in front of the entire Grand Fleet as they approach their pre-designated positions, ready to unleash. A series of silent, bright explosions dotted across the Tavalian command ship's bridge, 100 kilometers behind. All 18 are one of the heaviest class of battleships in the entire universe, now lay as dying husks, some even split into two. No missile launch from Earth was detected. Then, the entire fleet was hit from behind. During the 10-cycle period between Tavalian invasions, humans have strategically placed missile-equipped stealth dark probes in 3 concentric rings around the planet, one in the lunar orbit, one in high Earth orbit, and another one in medium Earth orbit, before defenses were shifted to planet-based systems, forming an integrated space defense network. Earth defense doctrine relies on luring any attacking force into a false sense of security, letting them pass the first defense ring in order to encircle them and launch an all-out frontal and rear aspect assault, a doctrine which was now being perfectly executed. The Tavalian spaceship's weaponry and targeting systems were specifically designed and developed to counter peer adversaries, e.g. another fleet of large warships, not to detect nor combat thousands of small floating trash cans armed with high-speed hundreds of megaton-yield thermonuclear missiles. Caught totally by surprise, with little means and time to defend against the overwhelming barrage, the Tavalian Grand Fleet could do next to nothing, as they faced total and utter destruction. 2 cycles after the Orbital Massacre, humanity became the first species in history to rise and join the intergalactic community without possession of any faster-than-light technology, of which the community believed will be achieved in a very short period of time, thanks to the abundant or reverse engineerable technology from whatever was left of the once mighty Tavalian Grand Fleet. The Tavalians reluctantly admitted defeat, unable to recover from the huge loss of resources and manpower from the failed invasion. A grave reminder for any species foolish enough to challenge mankind.